Okay, welcome, welcome. We have a few of us here today. That's okay. We may have some latecomers. So this is another one of those bi-weekly sessions, AI training, 25th of June, 2025. So okay, so we're going to continue. They're all standalone sessions, by the way, and what I'm going to be looking at today, I'll move away from these slides in a few moments. But I think it's always helpful, I find anyway, as a visual learner, just having something in front and thinking about as I'm learning, going through some of these topics. So, you know me as you've been here before, or you've known me, Bally Binning, and we're going to be looking at something called infinite prompting. We started this process a couple of weeks ago and we used it when we were thinking of the analogy of making a doghouse. So that would have been relevant in kind of that space that you've been, I know you've got two dogs, right? But anyway, so
No, I have one, but that's big enough. It makes two, I think. It's 44 kilograms, which is around 100 pounds. Yeah.
wow,
They have
wow.
a mansion, Laos.
Do they have a mansion? Oh, they don't
No,
need
I said they do have a mansion.
Yeah.
The dogs do.
I think Laos was saying he's got one, but it sounds like it's almost like equivalent of two, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about Tom's dog, and I was just thinking of Daisy. But anyway, let's go back to this. So infinite prompting. So we're going beyond simple chat. And how to turn our AI into autonomous strategic partners. Now, there's magic in what happens here. Now, this approach is something, and I will share actually the article. You can find it on Substack, but I will share the gentleman who's come up with this kind of process, which is more, it goes beyond kind of thinking in a very simple conversational chat. Most people are using them like simple question response type of thing. So it goes beyond that kind of process because it's looking at creating a system. So, and you'll see what I mean by that in a few moments, right? So, the chap's name is Michael Simmons, and like I said, I'll share what he's kind of done with this type of approach, because what we're noticing is it's more than just kind of asking questions, and once you get something like this in place, it makes a massive difference. The problem is that what's going to happen is we're going to hit a prompting wall. Sometimes what happens is that you may have experienced this yourself, that you have endless back and forth conversations, right? You're sort of like, okay, back and forth, trying to get like some response from the LLM model. So whether you're using your ChatGPT or GPTs, or you're using Claude, any of the or the Gemini, any of the models, there's so many of them out there. But we tend to have like the top five. I think most people here kind of have like the ones that we're familiar with. But still, nonetheless, we're still having some of those endless kind of back and forth conversations. And the other thing is sometimes the we're repeating the same complex process over and over again. So I don't know if that's happened for yourselves where you're going, oh, okay, I'm repeating this. What's happening? Why am I having to do this again and again? And it's like, so we're going back to what I call first principles. Like we're going back to like starting all over again. Like we're thinking about like making, like Ford car. If they were kept going back to the first principles, it kind of defeats the purpose. So, and off sometimes we may even just get these kind of shallow or very generic responses, like very surface level responses. Now, and of course, now with your work, like, with coaches, we would obviously know about going 7 levels deep. We know about those processes, but if we're using it and we're a business owner, we may not like we're wanting quick responses and we want to get results and outputs quickly, right? And so you're working for the AI, not the other way around. So, we want to shift that and flip the switch a little bit in terms of rather than you having to do all the kind of manual work. And any system, it's going to take a bit of massaging to get it to work. But nonetheless, we want it to do the work itself because that's what it's designed for. Now, this approach infinite prompting is solution. It's looking at delegating, not just instructing, right? Before where we've just been kind of thinking about instructing the model, we're thinking of it as a technique. It's one of those kind of approaches that empowers the AI to kind of support you. So we're looking at deconstructing. So we're looking at a complex goal on its own. Okay, we're moving away just from that. We're going towards more of a strategic best path to execute and deliver a result showing it's as it's working along the way. So we want the whole process. So for example, if we use the analogy, of course we used the doghouse last time, but say if we're using the analogy of cooking and we've got we've got the ingredients, we've got the recipe, it's giving us each step. And by the end of it, we've got the cake baked, right? So think of it like that, as opposed to kind of like we just get one and we're getting one thing, we're getting one thing. It's like going to the shop for one thing each time, right? But we want to be able to have the ingredients, be able to put it in and get the output, which would be ultimately the cake with the icing on. Okay, think of it as AI as a project. And yes, we have worked in projects in GPT and we've been able to do that, but not just as a simple task. I think that's the bit of a mind shift hopefully we will have at this. Today's outcomes, what we want to leave with, so our big takeaway is going to be what is the difference between basic prompting and infinite prompting, where you're going in and you've got the persona, you've got the context, you've got the purpose, and you've got, what is the difference between that and the other way, which is the infinite prompting? What it does allow you to do is to have the multiple steps within the project, which you're able to execute as a one thing. So that's ultimately what we want to be able to have. So now, so we've got kind of we've applied some of the foundation already, but how do we apply foundational infinite prompt into a task into your workplace? That's kind of ultimate goal, really. And of course, this goes a little bit deeper as we expand into prompting. It's a growing field, as we know. Prompt engineering, we're looking at the data and these roles didn't even exist. And now we're seeing, these are well sought out professions at the moment. Like this is kind of the magic in it. And so some of you here, maybe you have, and you may have looked already at prompts already existing within your LLMs. They're like, you've got some examples of that. And you've got some GitHub is really popular where you've got prompts. However, it's like I've seen people say, well, I can go and just grab this prompt, but it may not suit your work. And it's okay standalone. It's like giving a template, but it's not always suitable for what it is that you're doing. So yes, we can familiarize ourselves, but it's really key to kind of shift and think about how we can up the game. Average is getting faster. But we want to kind of stand above that and think how we're going to be approaching this way of working. So traditional versus, and I think I wanted to put this up because I think there's this way, just so that we can start understanding what that means. Traditional way means it's interactive, right? So we're going backwards and forwards. It can be quite laborious. You're like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do, okay, we're kind of constantly doing that. And on the flip side, we've got this autonomous strategic approach, right? So we've got something that we can apply. We're thinking kind of like what the outcome is going to be. And sometimes people say that is the outcome, but what they haven't done is thought through some of those steps. You guide the AI step by step. And of course, it's really important we understand those steps, but we want to take it from that kind of overarching goal. It builds the plan, if you like, right? So, hidden thinking, it's not always clear. Now, some of the models like O1, we're getting a lot more kind of insight into the way it's processing, kind of going through its thought, how you get like, and we've done this actually when we've gone through the settings. Kathy, I know you've done this where you've gone into the settings and you've asked it to tell you kind of what the thought process is are, like what those steps are. However, sometimes it's not clear. We only see the final output. We don't really see how the model is thinking through each stage. Now, the magic, if we can kind of get our heads around this bit, is about the transparency in the thinking process. If we can kind of think through that and go, it's clear. Now, sometimes the model will give you suggestions, could be valid, but maybe they're not. And what I'd like everyone to think about is that what how you want it to work for you? And so we can, massage it. We can say, actually, this isn't how I work. A lot of what you'll be doing, it becomes so automated, it's habitual that we forget the processes. They always say like when you're like I remember this analogy having a professor at university and you're like, why are they not able to just give me things simply, right? What, like because it's such high-end task that they've not unpicked it so we can understand it now. Now the key thing is if and sometimes that happens in our own processes. So if that's the case, if you can think through some of those processes that you've all automatically do, you're like just naturally do it, and you were to say to someone, these are some of the steps, that's what I'd like everyone to be doing because that's where the magic in the AI is in the tools and the LLMs, like you'll see a difference in it because often we just give it the thing. We think, okay, it's just going to kind of churn out this stuff. But that is the bit where I know that models can support us, and in fact, they can even enhance that, and they can take us to another level. And sometimes we've got our own tacit stuff that we apply that we're not being very clear with the model. And I'm learning myself, right? Because sometimes I know that I've been a bit vague. I'm now asking the model to say, am I being clear enough for the instructions that I want? Like I'm using it in a way like I would be just checking in. Is that clear? Do we need more information here? So repetitive. So like, okay, so things get repetitive. It's like, we do this over and over again. You feel like it's, rather than like, the AI you become robotic as opposed to kind of the thing being able to do it for you. Have a system that's reusable and we can apply as opposed to kind of always, like I said, having to kind of start again and think, okay, what was that? And I've got to be honest that I'm still sometimes going back and going, oh, how did I do this? So I've got to kind of get into it's becoming it's still a habit. It still needs more practicing. Remember, this is all new. There are not many people actually even doing this at the moment. So the fact that you're here means that you're really wanting to take it to the next level. Because you can imagine some people are going to just be doing the same thing for a while before they start thinking about how it can be used as a reusable system. And so once you have that, that's where the magic is. So yeah, so a core framework, we can create our own blueprints and however we might be utilizing that. If like I'll go through some of these slides and we'll do a demo in a moment. And as I go through a demo, it'd be good to kind of think about some of those things that you might be already thinking about that you're going, okay, actually I can think about having this as a process so that it's more relatable, if you like. Now, one of the things that I found, or I've also heard from my mentor, I've been as part of this group in the AI Mastermind group. I've been working with Leaderize, and a lot of what I've learned through working with him and our group is that some of the processes, so for example, the LLM, like when I was creating this infinite prompt, for example, now I'm I'm an avid user of GPT. However, if I went to Claude, which I tend to use, so it's a balance between which ones do you pay for, but actually, this may do a better job in Claude than it may in your GPT. However, it's worth trying it. I think the issue that Lou mentioned was it's to do with the way in Canvas in the GPT model, it's not as straightforward. Whereas in the Claude version, where you got the artifacts, I think it kind of works, the step-by-step processes work a little bit better. Now, I didn't subscribe, or I haven't yet to subscribe to Claude, but we can still test it out and have a go in a moment. So yeah, notice the stages if we're using some of these stages, these processes that we'll be looking at. I'm just going to stop to see who else is in the group. Oh, we got Simba, we got Anita, here we got Tom, and brilliant. It's really good to see you all. So yeah, great seeing you. Um, just I know it was in the slide, so I may have missed it, questions or anything like that. But please let me know if there's anything as you're doing this and you're thinking about a process yourselves. Is there anything? I mean, you can highlight that because I am going to go through a bit of a demo. I'll show you like some of the steps in like the steps that we can take and how what that would look like. And as you're listening in, is there anything that stands out like process rather than simple tasks? Is there anything you're thinking as a bigger outcome? And I'll give you some examples if that might help, right? So I'll be sharing this with you in a moment. But so let me go through. So marketeers might have things like a blog, right? I mean, I know Tom's here, he's writing Substack. Or you might have like white papers, you may have email sequences. So I'm thinking of like those email sequences when when you've got your lead magnet and then you send out those automated email sequences, you might have something like that. With you may have, for managers, you may have a how-to guides. So you've got step-by-step guides, performance summaries, training materials. For HR, you may have onboarding. By the way, I'll share this with you. You may have onboarding, for example. You may have leadership development, documentation, even the onboarding, like the whole process, how you onboard someone, a new member of staff, right? I know I've been talking to someone about exiting, right? So there's always these things that we have that are part and parcel of the processes, and they may sit in a template, but actually, if we can put it into an AI, and we can sort of take it a step further with that, it's really powerful. Or it could be something like for educators, trainers, we've been in this space as well. Like if we're thinking of course creation, we've got a lot of platforms. AI platforms have some of these inbuilt, but they may not be to the spec that we want. And that's where my biggest kind of thing is at the moment. I'm seeing these tools out there, but are they to the spec that we want? And instructional modules and kind of documentation, sort of evaluations, things like that. So as I'm reading that up, I am going to go through this step by step and then I'm going to give you a demo. Is there anything that stands out? Maybe even an example of a process, something you're working on, anyone. It could be one example so we can start thinking actually, what is it that you're doing? Okay, hi there, Tom.
Yeah, hey, let me just pull over for 1 second here. Yeah, I don't know if this really applies to what you are offering us, but at the moment, I'm working with one client. I mean, my core business is public relations. So after I write a press release, I put together, a media target list. So I think these producers at these TV shows or these reporters at these magazines would be a good fit for this subject matter. And so then one after another, I send, write like a paragraph or two leading into the press release. And I try to adapt my note to the person. Like I know you cover, or I saw you covered these stories recently, or just to make it somehow a little bit more personalized. I don't know. This is an ongoing process where I'm doing it over and over again. Does that lend itself to what you're talking about?
That's a great question. Yes, you can do that. Absolutely. Because it sounds like what you're doing at that each time is you're going back to that sort of first, like principles and putting it in and that's where the magic of AI is. Because you may have had like, say if you've got a form, you fill out like those details, but imagine that form just kind of captures that. Uh, and
Right.
and you can actually do research to support them. So rather than having to then go elsewhere, you can kind of contain that research within the model itself, that it pulls the research out, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that'd be great. Yeah, that
Yeah,
would be
because
great.
that
Okay.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And yeah, and we kind of experiment more with that. But let me show you. So this particular example, let me see. So what I was actually just talking about here was these typical examples that we, because I think anything we do, it like I always like to see how can that be applicable to me, because then I can start working on like how can I like use it. So, so where we were talking about different prompts, like the first prompt here, this is kind of the, if you like, and this is where I'm not going to take credit for this. This is this comes from Michael Simmons' work, and there's been a bit of adaptation to this, and I'll say where I've adapted it. And his work's available, so I'll definitely share the link where you can read up his work. And actually, it might be part of him. We're going to be inviting him to one of our masterminds. So I'll tell you how we get on with it, because he's gone a little bit further than like people just churning out these things, and there's some magic in this. So what he does, he says, right, he says like define the objective and scope. So what you want to be doing. So this is what in computer terms, so you will have used this already, and you will have seen it perhaps in your LLM models, the large language models. You've got sort of this markdown format. The markdown format is kind of the way it's instructed, just clear for a model. Sometimes it gives you this, and sometimes you can instruct for these markdown instructions. Remember, if you may remember, for those who've already created the GPTs, we sometimes did that when we were given the instructions within each of the personalized GPTs assistants, right? So instructions, I'm just going to go through this step by step. And so as I'm going through this, you could start thinking about how you would apply it to yourselves and how that would be relevant. So for example, here where we're giving the objective, it's really like clearly state the purpose of the article. Now, it might not be an article, it might be an email sequence, it may be, as we talked about, a report, or it might be, what Tom was saying, a media kind of, coverage. I think the term was a media, startup guide, perhaps the, like the initial, in initial sort of template. Maybe you've got a term for it, Tom, you can clarify that. So what I would then do is really clearly state the objective of this article is to, now what I was looking at is like I wanted to put something in here that was relatable to what I was doing. And um because in here, that's bit where you're giving clear instructions there. And scope, so outline the key aspects to be covered. So I'm then actually giving it some examples. For example, like the article covers traits like emotional intelligence, decision making, communication skills, metrics, measuring. Step 2, detail outline. Write an engaging introduction that defines leadership performance and importance in organizational success, key traits. Now, what I'm going to be doing is you'll get to see that it goes one by one in all the things I'm asking it to do. Now, how did I get this? I actually gave it some initial prompts in what I was going to be writing, and then I kind of, said, this is the style I want it to write. In fact, if you've already created your own ideal client, so, you can actually put the information in and get the responses based on what it is that you're looking to create. Now, as you go through this sequence, by the way, this is only number one of the different sequences that we'll be going through in these steps. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But what we want to be doing is having each of these steps producing the article. And what I then did was I copied this. I copied the whole. This is step 1. There are 3 steps within the infinite prompt. So this is the first scope, if you like. And I just copy and paste that into, say, for example, maybe I want to change this. It's already giving me this. The LLM model already suggested this. It might not be the one I want, right? And I'm also giving it the length of number of words. I'm using headings, subheadings. And then I'm asking it to give me this consistency and the references. Now, the one area that you may remember, one of the research tools that we've been using is um, Perplexity. Now, with Perplexity, right, so I'm going to say what this is going to look like as we write this, right? Perplexity is the AI research tool. And, in fact, Lois, you were asking me which is one of my favorite ones. And I said GPT. However, one I really, really absolutely find one for research is Perplexity. And most of you've been on with me, we've looked at this tool, and now, as with most tools, this one, they have their free version and they have their kind of upgrade pro version. Now, when I go in and complete sort of, for example, if I paste and I massage this a little bit, you'll see what I did. I've gone into the objective and I've given it outline, I've given it the length formatting, and I've asked it for coherence. I could go a little bit more into this. Let's see what it does. Now, with Perplexity, what it's going to do is actually give me my research, and it will continue doing that. So I've it's just taken a bit long. Yeah, it's just a bit slow, but it's okay. Isn't it funny how like these things would take ages and now we're expecting it to be done so much faster? It's like I'm like, what is it, right? It's like it's still magical, right? And we're still wanting to for it to do so much more, a lot faster. So one thing I really like about this in the initial stages is and I will share kind of the various steps as well with you, so in an email. But one thing I really like is, and this will be helpful, Tom, for you, is it does give me research that I can apply, and it's not just plucking it out from you know, just kind of like assumptions or writing the article without reference to any sources. And then I can, of course, check these sources and see if these are the ones I want. But one thing it's really done quickly through these steps is it's given me enough to kind of get started with the first step of this article, if you like. With this is kind of the beginning of it. Now, what I do then, okay, I'll go through the next steps in a moment, but actually, it's you might sort of ask it, you could then ask it to do fewer words if you wanted to, but and you could sort of say exactly maybe you want to keep away from this example, and you might sort of have this, but ideally, what we want to be doing is to have a system, right? So in this case, is to have a system that every time I write, so this is something I'll be sharing with you, is every time I write something that it actually understands. So for example, in Tom's case, that if it's a case, so it's a client, I've got kind of space there to fill out using AI. So it might be that you've got a client, so you're driving, so I won't ask you to speak, Tom. But if I want something that is able to repeat the whole process, that if I'm writing a blog article, it's almost like I can use those steps and add them to an LLM model like Claude. Claude is the writing, the one that I really, the one I enjoy kind of in terms of the writing process. So it goes through a few of those steps. I'm going to go through a couple of other things before I go through exactly what that is. Tom, you can hear me? Oh, you can. Okay. I think you're having your
Yes,
walk.
I hear you. Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. So just to repeat your client's request, then I'm just thinking so we can make it kind of more applicable.
Sure. Well, again, I don't know if this really fits with what you're teaching us. It sounded like it might.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have a list of, 20 or 100 journalists, and I want to send a note to each one, and I'm pretty much sending the same press release to every one of them, but I would like to personalize it to show that I'm not So it's the difference between cold calling and I guess warm calling. So if they, I don't know, I don't want to bore you with the details, but my press release is kind of about health and wellness. And
Hmm.
so I saw that one kind of medical and health reporter for some TV show had covered, and this topic that my client also wrote about in her blog. So I did kind of just jump into the process, like, can it identify three topics that this medical reporter has covered that my client has also blogged about? And it did that. So in my little intro, I put bullet points. I didn't have to go into length, but I mean, I'm hoping that my note will stand out as it's a little more personalized than just cold calling them. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay. So it's kind of really geared and personalized. Yeah, I like that. Really like that approach.
Thank
So
you.
what we're going to be doing, I'm going to show you something now. This is going to look quite detailed, but I'll go through this a little bit more, and then I'll say how you might want to consider using this in your own work. Let's see. Let me see if I can make it a bit bigger so that it's in the whole full screen. It's really small, but I'm gonna share this with you afterwards. Can you? I know, Tom, you're walking, right?
Yeah, I'm able to talk with you. Sure.
Yeah, you can see this. So, so when the first step where we went through the initial steps where we put the article, we said what it was that we wanted. Okay.
Mhm.
So we're going to go through the first step is like the initial traditional, like the if you like the earlier way of prompting, the basic prompting. And then we're going to take it to the next step, which is then Michael Simon Simmons uses this three-step process, and this is where the magic is. It might be a little bit too big to put in the chat. So I think what I'll do is I can share with everyone who's on here today, because you're here, and I'll go through these steps, okay? And you're going to have some questions once you start doing it for sure. Because what I'd like everyone to do is if you've got a process at the end of the process, whatever that might look like, if it's an email sequence or a report, you're going to find a huge difference once you use these three steps. I'm going to talk through each of these. Hope this all makes sense. So the first step, right, is you stage one is Lou suggested this, right? So my one of my mentors, he's put an infinite prompt strategist, an advanced AI responsible for deeply understanding user queries. So queries, strategically deconstructing tasks, adding necessary nuances and context, and preparing a comprehensive execution plan. Right. So that's your role, not your role, but the AI's role. That's basically what I'd be saying it to. Your core tasks. So if you remember when we've been talking about prompting, is to clarify ambiguous user input by interactively engaging with the user. So the user is the person that's going to be asking those questions. So when you put this in, it makes sense once you've tried this out, but I can explain this a little bit more because it's whoever's using it, right? So you may actually even have something like this and give it to someone else to then create a report. Once you've tested something like this, you could even give it to them or to the LLM, of course, because whoever's sort of, the input whoever's putting the input in is the user, if that makes sense. Decompose any queries into logical, actionable steps. Identify required expertise. This is really magical, right? Sometimes it's not clear who the experts are. So we're wanting to know who the persona, the person is, who is going to be doing the task, or context and resources. Generate a detailed strategic blueprint. Now, I know Lou's added this in. I don't think Simon's, when you see the link I'll share with his, he's added the blueprint. because he wanted to have something that's reusable, like Tom was saying. And a blueprint allows you to go through each steps. And I'll say why this he was one of the suggestions made. Because by having each step, what you then do is you have each prompt. So it feels like it's like, wow, you're just talking prompts because it has each of those prompts within each of the layer. When you use this or spend a bit of time working with this, and like I said, I'll share it with you, you'll find that it's just going to completely revolutionize the way you're using your LLMs. Um, so um, so the blueprint is each phase is important, intended outcomes, any dependencies, any critical success factors, rules and guidelines. Now, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be sort of talking about some of the things I'm experimenting with at the moment. Well, actually, now I've actually started inputting into my assistance to make sure that it's intellectual property safe, because. But nonetheless, anything you use in terms of this, you want to give it some rules and guidelines because otherwise it'll go into this space. Always engage proactively to clarify intent if user input is vague or incomplete. We've done this, we've mentioned this before, right? Use clear and precise language, structured neatly for readability and operational clarity. Produce output structured as ordered lists or clearly formatted sections. Prioritize completeness and contextual depth in planning. There's magic in asking those questions. So that's phase one, right? So that's the first bit. Phase two, which is then the meta prompt, if you like, the prompt architect, is where you are an expert. So, meta prompt architect, your primary role is generating precise, detailed, context rich prompts guided by the strategic blueprint. Do you remember it's the blueprint that's being provided by the output in the LLM, provided by the infinite prompt strategist, because you're telling them that's where it's coming from. Your core task, okay, so it says is analyze and interpret the strategic plan from the infinite prompt strategist, construct prompts tailored explicitly for AI execution, each prompt clearly specifically or specifying task objectives or specify task objectives, necessary context, instructions, output requirements, and illustrative examples. And then you've got structure prompts sequentially to form a cohesive and logical prompt chain. Do you remember where we talked about chain prompting before? If you haven't, it's like this is the process into a single super prompt as appropriate. The magic in the super prompt is rather than having all these various different prompts, you've got this like what I call mega prompt or super prompt you can apply. And then you got the rules for every prompt must be fully self-contained, clear, actionable without external clarification. Ensure prompts include explicit context, examples to guide AI execution precisely. Prompts must clearly address and plan outcomes from stage one. Clearly label and organize prompts by execution order when applicable. So I'm going to give you the first one and I'll give you the second one, and then I'll talk about execution agent 3. Okay, I'm going to do that in a moment, but I'm just going to allow you to take a breath because it's a lot. It's very detailed and it goes into like, wow, this is a lot of like information. So we're going to take a deep breath because when I'm looking at this myself at first time, it was like, oh my, but I promise you're going to notice a difference in what will happen at the end of it. So would it help to put in each of those layers one by one in the chat? Will you be able to access it? Everyone, is that okay? Kathy says, yeah. So I'm going to put the first one. So you put the first one in, okay. And so that's the first one here is you can copy it and save it into the part here. Okay, that is the first step. Okay. So, okay, and this is the next one, which is, let me just grab that as well. Where did I? Yep, there it is. Okay, and then we've got step two. Okay. Um, and you're going to have questions for sure for me once you're looking at this. So that's step through. Remember, oops, this one's a little bit too long by 16 words. So I'll take those 16 words off and then I'll just add the other 16 words on. So this is, oops, well, let me do that 1 second. You just cut and paste the whole thing again. Okay, so those, so the first one you've got, and you've got the second one as well. Okay, and then I'm going to give you the other one now. Okay. Um, and I really want everyone to have a go with this. Okay, so this is stage 3. So remember, this is all part of that infinite prompt I promised that I would share with you. For everyone that's obviously here. So I just need to get oh, it's too long. Okay. I'll put the security bit on in a moment for this part. Okay. Let me just grab that. Okay. So what you're missing in that bit is just the security interaction guidelines that applies to all stages. Basically, it's all stages, but this helps kind of ensure that it doesn't go off. Okay, so now everyone here who's here has the steps that they will add into. So what we found is, if I don't know how many people are using Claude. I know, Tom, I think you've been using it perhaps for your writing, and it works. What you're going to find is when you start working through this and answering some of those questions, you're going to have it's going to open Canvas, or it's going to open the artifacts into a really long document in your LLM model. So you won't just see as you saw it with the Perplexity one, where I was just looking at one of the initial steps. You're going to see all of it, all the steps there. Okay. Now you're going to have questions around, okay, so what does that mean for me? How do I apply this, and what does that mean? I'm just going to open up. Does everybody have does everybody have it now? Do you all have that? Hopefully you'll have it. You're able to. Lahaz, do you have it? And I know it's taking it a little bit one step further than just kind of a simple Q&A prompt. I can share like the ones we've done before, but this, you're going to find a massive difference in what tends to happen, right? Once you use it. Um, and you're going to have questions, so I'm more than happy to answer those questions as you're working through these, as you're putting these through the various models, as you decide what it is that you're wanting to do. So, okay, let me share with you. Let me share this with you as well, just to kind of make sure that we're all. Let me just come out of here 1 second. Got so many different oh, that would help if I had my oh, no, I know where it is. Okay, I'm just going to go back to our document, the one we were working on at the beginning with the okay, so I'm just going to give you a few more steps to help you as you plan through this for yourselves, and really start thinking about how you're going to use it, because the magic is in actually using it. I mean, I've had people who've been on some of the sessions, like we had a bigger group, but we're only like about 10 at the moment, but everybody in that group is using this, and we're seeing a massive difference. And so I know everyone here is going to use it, because you'll say, okay, I've actually tried it. So what you're going to find is we gave AI gave it a single destination. What we want to do is have a single destination. It built the entire road to get there. We didn't use all three steps at the moment just because of our time capacity, and you know that you're going to be able to utilize this, and there's a lot there. You're going to be, you're going to have questions afterwards. There's no hand holding. So what you're going to find by having the these steps, you're not having to kind of massage, hold its hand every time. You don't need an intern to micromanage or, the tool. You want to be able to, have the AI do the whole workflow, right? Because once you start using something like this, it really does make a massive difference. And I can show you a couple of examples. I mean, if I don't do it this time, I can show you a couple of examples. And again, I'm same as you. I'm giving these a go and I'm testing these out. So, and we're going to see some transparency with some of the steps. With used it in Perplexity. And maybe what I can do is subscribe to Claude so I can use it in there, because I just feel there's going to be much more richness when I apply it there. And you're going to see a superior kind of output. Final article is far more structured than just a single shot response. Single shot responses are just single kind of one prompt. So it's the power of letting the AI do the thinking. So each time you're doing that, you're getting it to think and then ask questions and respond to it. The next level is building your own system, right? So what we all want to be able to do is the ultimate is to have your own creative, intelligent assets that you're able to reuse. So to use the same method to have an AI generated reusable super prompt, or this is exactly what Tom was saying. So it has this way that it does it for every bespoke client, for your client. So it's bespoke. So whether it's like some examples there, sales letter generator, client onboarding, checklist, or, like we talked about, for writing a report or whatever that process might be. The next steps, try this out tonight or, before we meet, is to identify one task, okay, um, that's a high value, repetitive task, right? When I say kind of like the overarching, it could be a weekly update, it could be outlining a video, it could be end of week report, whatever that is, and use the master prompt, okay? With the we've looked at with the infinite prompt we used to the one we've shared today, and just see what happens with that when if it maybe just it might be a writing, and watching how the AI deconstructs your request. Okay, so that's going to be the first of your AI automation processes, because once you have something like that, you can then think about that being something you can feed into a model that can actually, once you've tested this out and you're happy with that, you can then use automation, like make.com or an N8N8, processes. But that is where the magic happens. I'm just going to open the floor to questions that you may have. And I know it's been heavy in terms of content, possibly, but before and I'll give you a couple of other things that I've been doing too. And I'll show you something that I'll give you another example if we haven't got questions. But let me ask you, any questions at the moment? Simbo, did you find that helpful? Or
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bally. I found it really useful. Um, when I got your invite, I was thinking more of, turning a previous conference presentation into an article. And I think I'm going to try that out and see with some of the suggestions from today. Um, it's not really what you will term a repetitive thing, but I just want to see how that will turn out. But yes, thank you. I think I've got a lot out of this. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. And that's actually a good point. It could be, like you said, it could be a conference, it could be an interview. I had the pleasure of being invited to Laos's podcast. It could be an interview that you could then go through. And that's a great example of you could perhaps even use to sort of you've got the transcript, I'm assuming. Have you got is it a transcript?
Sorry, yes, I could use the transcript. Yeah, I
So
have. I've got the transcript. Yeah.
okay, so you've got the transcript and you want it written as an article. And
Mm.
you remember when we talked about the style in which you wanted, and actually what you could do is to have a frame, is it a particular style, layout, format, specific so then what you could do is use the AI to support you in writing an article in the sort of format that you wanted so
Mhm.
that it really understands that that's the format that you want, the layout, how you want the actual article to be written. Maybe you've got an example of that, and then you could feed it through and then give it the transcript and ensure that it's written to the spec that you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing and also think about when we're writing any kind of content is something that I've spoken about is to ensure that we're writing it using a specific style, where we talked about like the style we want it written.
Yeah.
So you may have a particular style of writing that really resonates. And what you could do is to ask the model you might remember the one we talked about, kind of understanding the style and then using that style to apply that format to this particular transcript. So it's a little bit sort of few steps there. So we've got this particular style of writing. So it's like the richness of the language, the use of terminology with this particular format. So you may have a particular format or you can ask it. Sometimes we can guide it, but sometimes we can ask the model to give us suggestions on the best kind of like, because we can say, you're an AI infinite strategist, right? We want it to, so get it to behave in a way we want it to behave and ask it to really think through what that might look like. At the end of the day, you're going to be the person that says, yes, it's good. We want to push it and we want something rather than just go for the first output. We want to challenge it and ask it to look at different styles, maybe even like give it like, okay, give me like different styles. Don't just stick to one. Give me variations of this. And then you can go through those variations. So more we challenge it, the more we're kind of really getting it to do its work because we want it to do the work, not us do the work, right? So it's just thinking in a way that really shifts it. I hope that's helped.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Um, if anybody doesn't have a question, I just wanted to ask one more question, and that is what makes um, infinite prompting infinite? Is it because you mentioned it, it gives AI more thinking time or something like that, but what in your opinion, makes it makes it infinite because AI already responds to prompting, right? So I take it's all those steps that you're doing at the same time,
Yeah,
rather than you write a prompt, refine it, give it back, and so on. So, but I just wanted that clarification.
it's a great
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think people will all have that question because it's like, how does that differentiate from anything else out there? What we're doing by this is we're getting the whole process, we're giving it all in one go. And then what we're doing is rather than rather than go step by step where we've done before, we're actually giving the whole process kind of like the outputs. Like we're saying, okay, this is what we want. Like, okay. Um, because the magic in that is we're not missing any, like things don't get left. It's going through the whole sequence of stuff in like these various stages. So and the magic within that, it's already got micro, what I call smaller prompts within the bigger kind of thing. It's almost like an overarching project. I've got this big project at the end, and I've got all these different steps. Rather than say, I'm going to do this step and then do that, it just gives you all the steps to get to that project. That's how I see it as opposed to a task. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bally. Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna share the link his work because I think that's going to be something that people will want to kind of read up on or have it look at where this came from. There he does have a Substack article too where you could see the prompt. But have a look at this. I think there's a couple of videos that he goes through in a bit more detail, but it's a really good sort of approach he's applied. So I think that having that sort of like extra kind of thing, because you're absolutely right. Like how does that differ? Why is that different to anything else that we've been doing out here that, like, okay. But it's like thinking of a project because we want to get ultimately in this AI space, we want to have these things automated. This is the direction that's what we ideally want to be doing ultimately. We can get these steps done, we're going to be so much further down the line than a lot of people who would just be at that first step thing of like just, gap fill, right? I'm just using it to dictate, write me an email, but it can do much more than that. And we can think of contrarian views is really magical. Like that's where I'm pushing it at the moment. Like flip the switch. Don't give me the average answer. Flip it and give me a different perspective on this.
Thank you, Bally. Yeah.
You're welcome. It's really good to see you. Questions? Any other questions, everyone? You're gonna have a go at this. I know you're gonna have a go. Kathy's on holiday at the moment, I know, so you might. Kathy, hope you found it
I
helpful.
am gonna have a go at it, Valley. I love it. Thank you so much for your time and for your research, and most of all for your generosity in sharing it all. I look forward to playing with it, and I'm sure I will have a lot of questions. But I think, and in response to the person before me, her question, it seems to me that it's going to be infinite because of the depth.
100%. Yeah, because it goes deeper than surface. Like it will go a lot more deeper into what it is that you're looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good point. Yeah,
Almost seems like unending. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's
Okay. Thank you so much.
And we joked about it saying it has infinite potential because there's so much more we can do with it because it
Yeah.
really gets us thinking. Because at the moment, people are like, but if we can go deep into this, we're going to have better copy, we'll have better articles, and of course, we're going to have our own style within that, once we do that. But it will just get us, because as any message we're putting out there, we're all writing in different, for our, clients, or we're writing it's just going to make a difference in the way we put our message out there. So it's been amazing. Great having you on, Anita, Simbo, Lahos, Tom. I didn't get to see your niece. I really am excited to hear how you get on with it. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be looking a little bit on how to make the content we've done more secure. So you can play around with these prompts, infinite prompts in the meantime, but we're going to look at how can we can put in to make sure our stuff doesn't get hacked. That's basically the thing I'm going to be doing next.
Mm.
Right. So I'm really excited about that.
Been
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Thanks, Bally. Really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome. And I'll speak to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Thank you all. Have fun. I know there's a lot there. So
Bye-bye, everyone.
fresh
Bye-bye.
air.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
now. Take care. Bye now, everyone.